I discovered the HOA had paved over my private hiking trail when I came home from a week-long business trip in Denver to find my rustic dirt path through the woods transformed into a gleaming stretch of fresh asphalt, complete with yellow dividing lines down the middle. My name is Lawson, and I own 40 acres of wooded property outside of Asheville, North Carolina. When I bought this land 3 years ago, it came with a natural trail that wound through old-growth forest, connecting my property to the public trailhead about 2 miles away. That trail had been there for decades, maintained by my family since my grandfather owned the land in the 1970s. It was technically on my property, though neighbors had been allowed to use it informally for years. The key word being allowed because it was mine. The subdivision next to my property, Pleasant Valley Estates, had been built 5 years back, and with it came an HOA that seemed to think their jurisdiction extended far beyond their cookie-cutter houses and manicured lawns. I had deliberately chosen to live outside their boundaries, purchasing the old Lawson family land specifically to avoid the kind of nonsense HOAs were known for. But standing there on that Tuesday afternoon in late April, staring at what used to be my peaceful woodland trail, I realized the HOA had decided my property rights were merely suggestions. I pulled my truck into my driveway and sat there for a moment, trying to process what I was seeing. The trail entrance, which used to be marked by 2 natural stone pillars my grandfather had placed there, was now flanked by reflective markers. The dirt path where wildflowers grew each spring was buried under 2 inches of asphalt. Even the slight curve around the old oak tree, which had to be at least 200 years old, had been straightened out, requiring them to cut into the tree's root system. I got out and walked the length of the trail, my boots making unfamiliar sounds on the hard pavement. Birds that normally nested in the low brush along the path were gone. The small creek crossing, where I used to have to hop stones, now had a culvert and a flat paved surface over it. They had not just repaved the trail, they had completely destroyed the natural character of it. At the far end, where my property line met the public trailhead parking area, I found a freshly painted sign that made my blood pressure spike. Pleasant Valley Estates Community Trail HOA members only no trespassing. My trail, my property, and they had put up a sign restricting access. I pulled out my phone and called my attorney, Marcus Chen, who had handled the property purchase for me. "Marcus, the HOA just paved my private trail without permission," I said the moment he answered. "Your private trail? The one on your property?" Marcus asked, his voice shifting from casual to professional immediately. "The very same. I was gone for a week and I came back to find it completely paved over. They put up signs claiming it is theirs. Do not touch anything. Take photos of everything. Document every detail. I will pull your property deed and survey. This is going to be interesting." Interesting was one word for it. I spent the next hour photographing every angle, every sign, every inch of asphalt. I documented the damage to the old oak tree, the filled-in creek bed, the destroyed wildflower patches. I took video walkthroughs with timestamps and GPS coordinates enabled. The next morning, I went to the county records office and pulled copies of my property deed, survey maps, and title history. Everything confirmed what I already knew. That trail was entirely on my property, running from my northern boundary to my eastern boundary. The Pleasant Valley Estates subdivision was on the other side of my eastern fence line, but their property did not extend onto my land by even an inch. I was organizing my documents at home when I heard a car pull into my driveway. Through the window, I saw a silver Lexus SUV with a Pleasant Valley Estates HOA sticker on the windshield. Out stepped a woman in her late 40s, wearing white capri pants, a pastel pink blouse, and sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. I opened the door before she could knock. "Can I help you?" I asked. "I'm Patricia Whitmore, president of the Pleasant Valley Estates, HOA," she said, not quite smiling. "I wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood and discuss the trail renovation we just completed. The trail on my private property that you paved without my permission." I kept my voice level. Patricia's expression tightened. "Well, that trail has been used by the community for years. We simply improved it for everyone's safety and enjoyment. You should be thanking us, really. Do you know how much professional paving costs?" "I know exactly how much it costs, and I never asked for it." "That is my private property, Miss Whitmore. You had no right to touch it. The trail connects to public land," she said, her voice taking on a condescending tone. "And it has been used by the public for decades. That makes it a public easement, which means the HOA has every right to maintain it for community safety." I almost laughed. That is not how easements work. Permissive use does not create a prescriptive easement in North Carolina, and even if it did, there are specific legal requirements that have not been met. More importantly, you did not ask permission, did not notify me, and now you are trying to restrict access to my own property. "I think you will find that our attorney disagrees with your interpretation," Patricia said, crossing her arms. "The trail improvement is done, and we expect all community members to respect the HOA guidelines for its use." "I am not a community member. I do not live in your subdivision. I own private property outside your jurisdiction. The trail is within the community recreation area as designated by our master plan," she insisted. "Your master plan does not override my deed, which I had recorded long before your subdivision existed," I said. "I am going to say this once clearly. Remove the pavement, restore my property to its original condition, and do not set foot on my land again without written permission." Patricia's face flushed red. "We invested over $20,000 in that trail improvement. We are not tearing it up because you want to be difficult." "Then you should have asked before you started," I said. "You have 1 week to begin restoration, or I will take legal action." "You cannot do this," she sputtered. "The community deserves access to nature trails. You are being selfish." "What I am being is a property owner whose rights you violated. 1 week, Miss Whitmore." I closed the door, and through the window, I watched her stomp back to her Lexus and peel out of my driveway, spitting gravel. Marcus called me that afternoon. I reviewed everything. "You have an airtight case. That trail is 100% on your property. They committed trespass and vandalism at minimum. The question is, how do you want to handle it?" "They are not going to restore it voluntarily," I said. "Probably not. So you have options. Sue for damages and restoration. Report it to the county as unpermitted construction on private land. Or both." I thought about it. "What if we build them for an easement?" "What do you mean?" "They want to claim it is their trail. Fine. They can pay market rate for an easement across my property, plus damages for the unauthorized work, plus interest for late payment. I want them to understand exactly how expensive their assumptions were." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "That is brilliant and legally sound. Let me draft something. Commercial easement rates for that length of trail in that location, with the improvements they made, would run around $5,000 per year. Plus, we can bill for the trespass, the property damage, and premium rates since it was unauthorized. This could get very expensive for them very quickly." "Good," I said. 3 days later, Marcus Hand delivered a formal legal notice to Patricia Whitmore and the Pleasant Valley Estates HOA board. The letter outlined the trespass, demanded immediate cessation of all use of the trail, and presented two options: restore the property to its original condition within 30 days, or enter into an easement agreement. The easement terms were generous, I thought. Only $12,000 per year for the trail access. A one-time payment of $50,000 for the unauthorized improvements and damages, and all future maintenance to be coordinated through me with proper insurance and indemnification. The kicker was the interest clause. If they did not respond within 15 days, interest would accrue at the maximum legal rate of 8% on the entire amount. I did not expect to hear back quickly, and I was right. 10 days passed. I put up my own signs at both ends of the trail. Private property no trespassing violators will be prosecuted. I also installed game cameras at 3 locations along the trail to document any HOA members who decided to ignore the signs. On day 11, the HOA sent a response, but not to Marcus. Instead, 3 board members showed up at my door at 7 in the morning on a Saturday. Patricia was there, along with 2 men in polo shirts embroidered with the Pleasant Valley Estates logo. "Mr. Lawson," Patricia began, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "we received your attorney's ridiculous letter. We are here to resolve this reasonably." "Then you are prepared to discuss the easement terms or restoration timeline?" I asked. One of the men, who introduced himself as Brad Hutchins, the HOA vice president, stepped forward. "We are prepared to allow you to drop this nonsense and let the community continue using the trail as they have been." "Allow me?" I raised an eyebrow. "You are on my porch, on my property, telling me you will allow me to give up my rights." "The community has used that trail for years," the other man, Stephen Palmer, the HOA treasurer, chimed in. "You have no legal right to suddenly restrict access." "Actually, I have every legal right. It is called ownership. You all, on the other hand, committed criminal trespass and vandalism." "We improved your property," Patricia snapped, her composure cracking. "We made it better, safer, more accessible, and now you want to extort money from families who just want to enjoy nature." "I want compensation for work I never authorized on property I own. That is not extortion. That is basic property law." "We could sue you for blocking public access," Brad said, puffing out his chest. "Please do," I said calmly. "I would love to watch you explain to a judge why you think you have rights to property you do not own, did not pay for, and never had permission to use." "The community will not stand for this," Patricia said. "We have over 100 families in Pleasant Valley Estates. We have resources. We have connections. And I have property rights, a clear deed and documentation of your trespass. Plus, my game cameras have recorded 17 of your residents using the trail since I posted the no trespassing signs. That is 17 counts of criminal trespass I could report right now." That made them pause. "You would not," Stephen said, but he sounded uncertain. "Try me." "You have 4 days left to respond to the easement offer before interest starts accruing. I suggest you discuss it with your HOA attorney instead of showing up at my door to threaten me." I closed the door and watched through the window as they huddled in my driveway, arguing. Patricia was gesturing wildly. Brad kept shaking his head. Finally, they left. Marcus called me that afternoon. "I just got a call from the HOA's attorney, some guy named Richard Pemberton. He says you are being unreasonable and his clients are willing to go to court." "What did you tell him?" "I told him to file whenever he is ready and that we would be counterfiling for trespass, vandalism, and violation of property rights." He got quiet after that. I think he is realizing his clients did not tell him the whole story. "Good. Derek, be prepared for this to get messy. HOAs like this do not back down easily. They will make your life difficult if they can. Let them try." The next week proved Marcus right. Someone filed a complaint with the county claiming I was running an illegal business by charging for trail access. The county inspector who showed up was apologetic when I showed him the documentation proving the trail was private property, and I was not running any business. Then the HOA sent a mass email to all Pleasant Valley Estates residents claiming I was a greedy developer trying to destroy community access to nature. My email inbox filled up with angry messages from people I had never met, calling me everything from selfish to heartless to a corporate shill. Someone left a dead possum on my porch. My mailbox was knocked over twice, and Patricia started a petition to have the county use eminent domain to seize my trail for public use. But I had been expecting all of this. I documented everything, saved every threatening email, and added it all to the growing file Marcus was building. On day 15, with interest about to start accruing, the HOA finally sent an official response to the easement offer. They rejected it and demanded I remove my no trespassing signs immediately or face legal action. "They are really doing this," Marcus said when he called to tell me. "They are actually going to court." "Then we go to court," I said, "and we counterclaim for everything." Marcus filed our counterclaim the next day. We sued for trespass, vandalism, property damage, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and requested both compensatory and punitive damages. We also filed for a temporary restraining order preventing any HOA members from using the trail pending the outcome of the case. The judge granted the TRO within 48 hours. That is when things really escalated. Patricia showed up at my property again, this time with a local news crew. I watched from my window as she gave an interview at the end of my driveway, painting herself and the HOA as victims of a greedy landowner who wanted to deny families access to nature. "This trail has been used by our community for years," she told the camera, actual tears in her eyes. "Our children play here, families hike together, and now Mr. Lawson wants to charge us thousands of dollars just to walk through the woods. It is unconscionable." I considered going out to set the record straight, but Marcus advised against it. "Let her spin whatever story she wants," he said. "The facts are on our side. When this goes to court, the truth will come out." But the news story aired that evening, and suddenly my phone was ringing off the hook. Friends asking what was going on, family members who had seen the news. Even my boss at the engineering firm where I worked called to ask if I needed anything. "It is all lies," I told everyone. "They paved my private property without permission, and now they are playing victim." Most people believed me, but the court of public opinion is not always rational. The news story went viral on local social media, and suddenly, I was the bad guy in Asheville's online community. People were calling for boycotts of my employer, demanding I be fired, even suggesting I should be forced to sell my property. Through it all, I kept my cool. I had the law on my side, and I knew it. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, Marcus subpoenaed all of the HOA's records related to the trail project, including meeting minutes, contractor invoices, and email correspondence. What we found was damning. The HOA had discussed the trail project in multiple board meetings, and the minutes showed they knew it was on private property. In one email chain, Patricia had actually written, "Derek Lawson is gone most of the time for work. If we complete the paving while he is away, it will be easier to claim established use." They had not just trespassed by accident. They had planned it, knowing it was illegal and hoping I would not fight back. Marcus was grinning when he showed me the documents. "This is conspiracy. Intentional trespass, and that bit about established use. They were literally trying to set up a fraudulent prescriptive easement claim. The judge is going to destroy them. What about criminal charges? I asked. Trespass is a misdemeanor in North Carolina, but with this level of planning and the dollar amount involved, we could potentially make a case for felony vandalism. Want me to contact the district attorney? Let's see how they respond to the civil case first, but keep that option open. 2 days before the hearing, the HOA's attorney called Marcus with a settlement offer. They would pay $5,000, and I would grant them a permanent easement for $1 per year. I laughed when Marcus told me. They committed $50,000 worth of damage, and they want to settle for $5,000 and basically free access forever. Not a chance. I told him it was insulting, Marcus said. His response was that his clients are a nonprofit HOA with limited funds and you are being greedy. His clients should have thought about their limited funds before they spent $20,000 paving someone else's property, I said. Counter with the original terms, $50,000 for damages, $12,000 per year for the easement or full restoration of the property. Non-negotiable. The HOA did not respond to the counter-offer. The morning of the hearing, I wore my best suit and arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early. Marcus was already there, reviewing his notes. "Remember," he said, "stay calm, be factual, and let me do the talking. The judge will see through their nonsense." The HOA showed up with their attorney, Richard Pemberton, who looked like he had swallowed something sour. Patricia was there, along with Brad and Stephen, and about 20 other HOA members who filled the gallery as a show of support. Judge Marion Foster presided, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with a reputation for cutting through legal theatrics. Pemberton started with an impassioned speech about community values, public access to nature, and the importance of preserving trails that had been used for generations. He painted me as a wealthy outsider trying to deny families simple pleasures. Judge Foster stopped him mid-sentence. "Counsel, does your client own the property in question?" "Well, no, Your Honor, but there is a long history of community use that we believe establishes." "Does your client have a recorded easement?" "Not a recorded easement, but we believe the prescriptive easement doctrine. Mr. Pemberton, prescriptive easements in North Carolina require open, notorious, hostile, and continuous use for 20 years under a claim of right. Can you demonstrate those elements?" Pemberton shuffled his papers. "The trail has been used by the community for at least 5 years, Your Honor, and 5 years does not meet the 20-year requirement, does it?" "No, Your Honor, but the spirit of the law is that property owners have rights, Mr. Pemberton. Did your client seek permission before conducting this work?" "We notified the community, Your Honor." "I asked about the property owner. Mr. Lawson, were you notified?" Marcus stood. "No, Your Honor. My client was not notified, did not give permission, and first learned of the paving when he returned from a business trip to find his private trail destroyed." Judge Foster turned back to Pemberton. "Your client paved private property without permission." "It was done in good faith, Your Honor, to improve safety. Good faith would have involved asking first. What I am hearing is trespass and vandalism. Do you have anything to present that suggests your client had legal authority to conduct this work?" Pemberton looked at his notes, at his clients, and back at the judge. "We believe community use establishes implied permission, Your Honor. Implied permission does not authorize construction. Mr. Chen, what is your client seeking?" Marcus presented our case clearly and methodically. He showed the deed, the survey maps, the photos of the destruction, and the calculations for damages and easement fees. He also presented the HOA meeting minutes and emails showing premeditation. Judge Foster's expression grew darker as she read the emails. "Miss Whitmore," she said, looking directly at Patricia. "Did you write this email stating you wanted to complete the work while Mr. Lawson was away to make it easier to claim established use?" Patricia stood, looking less confident than usual. "Your Honor, I was just trying to minimize disruption. You were trying to minimize opposition to your trespass. That is not the same thing." Judge Foster set the papers down. "Here is my ruling. The temporary restraining order is made permanent. The Pleasant Valley Estates, HOA, and all its members are prohibited from using the trail on Mr. Lawson's property. Furthermore, the HOA is ordered to pay Mr. Lawson $50,000 in compensatory damages for the unauthorized work and property destruction. You have 90 days to comply." "Your Honor," Pemberton stood quickly, "my clients cannot afford. Then your clients should not have spent $20,000 paving property they do not own. Additionally, I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for review of possible criminal charges. This was not an innocent mistake. This was planned, intentional trespass with the goal of establishing a fraudulent claim to someone else's property. That is serious." The gallery erupted. HOA members were shouting. Patricia was crying. Brad was red-faced and yelling something about injustice. Judge Foster slammed her gavel. "Order any further outbursts and I will clear the courtroom." She turned to me. "Mr. Lawson, you have the option to negotiate a settlement with the HOA if you wish, but you are under no obligation to do so. The judgment stands." "Thank you, Your Honor," I said. As we left the courtroom, several HOA members glared at me. One woman actually tried to block my path, but Marcus stepped between us. "You are ruining our community," she hissed. "Your HOA president ruined my property," I replied. "Talk to her about it." Outside, Marcus was jubilant. "That went even better than I expected. 50,000 in damages plus the permanent injunction, and the judge referring it for criminal review. That almost never happens in civil cases." "What are the odds they actually pay?" I asked. "They will pay. They have to. If they do not, we can put liens on HOA properties, garnish their accounts, all sorts of enforcement mechanisms. They will pay." Over the next week, I received 3 different settlement offers from the HOA, each one slightly better than the last, but none meeting the judgment amount. They offered $30,000, then $40,000, then $45,000 with a plea to consider their financial situation. I rejected them all and instructed Marcus to begin enforcement proceedings. The district attorney's office contacted me 2 weeks after the hearing. A prosecutor named Jennifer Valdez wanted to discuss the case. "Mr. Lawson, I have reviewed the file Judge Foster sent over," she said when we met at her office. "This is unusual. Most property disputes stay civil, but the premeditation here concerns me. Walk me through what happened." I explained everything, showing her the timeline, the photos, and especially the email where Patricia talked about waiting until I was gone. Jennifer nodded slowly. "This could support charges for conspiracy to commit trespass and vandalism. Possibly felony property damage depending on how we calculate the value. Are you interested in pursuing criminal charges?" "I want them to understand they cannot just take what they want," I said. "If criminal charges accomplish that, yes. Let me talk to my boss. We will be in touch." 3 weeks later, the HOA still had not paid the judgment. Marcus filed for enforcement, and the court approved liens against the HOA's bank accounts and the common property in Pleasant Valley Estates. That got their attention. Patricia called me directly, which surprised me since Pemberton should have told her not to. "You are destroying us," she said, her voice shaking. "Do you understand what you are doing? Families will lose their homes, property values will tank, all because you are greedy. All because your HOA trespassed on my property, paved my trail without permission and tried to steal an easement through deception," I corrected her. "You did this, Patricia, not me. You had chances to fix it. You could have asked permission before you started. You could have negotiated an easement. You could have accepted the settlement terms. You could have paid the judgment. Instead, you fought every step of the way, and now you are facing the consequences." "We do not have $50,000, she said. "Then you should not have spent $20,000 paving my property. That is not my problem." "Please," she said, and now she was crying. "I will do anything. We will remove the pavement. We will restore the trail. Just drop the judgment. You have had months to offer restoration. Now there is a judgment. Pay it and we are done." "I cannot," she sobbed. "Then the liens stay in place until you can. Goodbye, Patricia." I hung up feeling only slightly bad. I had given them multiple chances to do the right thing. 2 days later, Jennifer Valdez called to tell me the DA's office was filing criminal charges against Patricia Whitmore and Brad Hutchins for conspiracy to commit trespass and felony vandalism. The felony charge was based on the property damage exceeding a certain dollar threshold. "They will probably offer a plea deal," Jennifer said. "First-time offenders usually do not see jail time for this, but there will be probation, fines, and restitution. I wanted you to know before it hits the news." The arrests happened on a Thursday morning. I was not there, but I heard about it from multiple people. Sheriff's deputies showed up at Patricia's house at 8 in the morning and arrested her and Brad on felony warrants. They were processed, arraigned, and released on bond by early afternoon. The local news picked up the story immediately. "HOA president arrested for paving private trail" was the headline. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. People who had been calling me greedy started understanding what had really happened. The comments on the news articles were mostly supportive of me now. The HOA held an emergency meeting and voted to remove Patricia as president. They also voted to authorize payment of the full judgment, financing it through a special assessment on all Pleasant Valley Estates homeowners. Marcus called me with the news. They are ready to settle. Full payment of the judgment plus they want to negotiate terms for restoration of the trail. "I am listening," I said. The settlement conference happened at Marcus's office. The new HOA president, a woman named Helen Torres who seemed far more reasonable than Patricia, came with Pemberton and the HOA treasurer. "Mr. Lawson," Helen began, "I want to start by apologizing. What the previous board did was wrong. We understand that now. We are prepared to pay the judgment in full. We have also obtained quotes for removing the pavement and restoring the trail as closely as possible to its original condition. We are hoping you will consider allowing us to do that restoration work in lieu of some of the payment." "How much is the restoration quoted at?" I asked. $35,000. It is expensive because we have to remove the pavement without damaging the underlying soil, replant native vegetation, restore the creek bed, and address the damage to the old oak tree. I looked at Marcus, who nodded slightly. "Here is my counter-offer," I said. "You pay the full $50,000 judgment. You also pay for an independent restoration expert of my choosing to oversee the work and ensure it is done right. If your contractor does acceptable work under that oversight, I will refund you $15,000 from the judgment payment. That gives you incentive to do it right and ensures I get my property back the way it should be." Helen looked at Pemberton, who shrugged. "That is fair, Your Honor," he said, then caught himself. "I mean, Mr. Lawson, sorry, that is fair." "We accept," Helen said. The agreement was formalized within a week. The HOA paid the full judgment and restoration work began immediately. I hired an environmental restoration specialist named Dr. Sarah Chen from the University of North Carolina at Asheville to oversee the project. Dr. Chen was thorough. She required the contractor to carefully remove the asphalt and recycle it, remediate the soil beneath, and replant native species according to photos I had of the original trail. The creek bed was restored with natural stones. The old oak tree received treatment for the root damage and was carefully monitored. The work took 6 weeks. When it was done, the trail was not exactly as it had been, but it was close. Very close. The wildflowers would take time to return naturally, but Dr. Chen assured me they would, and she had supplemented with native plantings that would help. I walked the trail on a Saturday morning in late June, taking in the restored landscape. It was quiet again. Birds were singing. The creek burbled over the stones. The path was soft dirt under my boots. I honored the agreement and refunded the HOA $15,000. The criminal case against Patricia and Brad concluded with plea agreements. Both pled guilty to misdemeanor trespass and vandalism, with the felony charges dropped. They received 12 months of probation, community service, and were ordered to pay restitution to cover some of my legal fees. They were also permanently barred from serving on any HOA board. Pleasant Valley Estates recovered, though it took time. The special assessment to pay the judgment was about $500 per household, which made a lot of people angry, but they directed that anger at Patricia and the former board, not at me. Helen Torres turned out to be a competent HOA president who actually understood property rights. She sent me a personal note apologizing again and thanking me for being reasonable with the settlement. I even got an apology from Brad Hutchins, who admitted he had let Patricia talk him into the whole scheme and regretted it deeply. Patricia never apologized. She moved out of Pleasant Valley Estates 6 months later. I heard she and her husband relocated to Charlotte. As for the trail, I decided to open it back up to limited public use. I worked with the County Parks Department to create an actual legal trail easement that protected my property rights while allowing hikers to enjoy the path. The easement agreement specified that the trail would remain natural and unpaved, limited the hours of use, and required the county to maintain liability insurance. It was not about the money, though the compensation for my damages was certainly deserved. It was about the principle that property rights matter, that you cannot just take what you want because it seems convenient or because you think you know better, and that actions have consequences. The HOA learned an expensive lesson about respecting boundaries, both literal and legal. They learned that good intentions do not override property rights, and that cutting corners or hoping someone would not fight back was a terrible strategy. I learned something too. I learned that standing up for your rights is not always easy, and it is not always popular, but it is necessary. I learned that documentation is everything, that patience and strategy beat anger and impulse, and that sometimes the right thing to do is also the hard thing to do. On a cool morning in October, about 6 months after everything was settled, I was hiking my restored trail when I encountered a family from Pleasant Valley Estates, a young couple with 2 small children. They stopped when they saw me, looking nervous. "Are we allowed to be here?" The father asked. "We saw the county easement sign, but we know about the history." "You are allowed," I said. "The easement is legitimate. Just respect the trail, stay on the path, and enjoy the woods." "Thank you," the mother said, "and I am sorry about what happened." We moved in after all that mess, but we heard the stories. What the old board did was wrong. It was, I agreed, but it worked out in the end. "This trail is beautiful," one of the kids said, pointing at a cardinal in the trees. "I like that it is not paved. It feels like a real forest." I smiled. That is exactly what it is supposed to feel like. They continued on their hike, and I stood there for a moment, listening to the forest sounds, feeling the breeze through the old trees. The trail was mine again, protected legally and restored physically. The HOA had learned their lesson. Justice had been served. Sometimes the best outcome is not the one that is easy or quick, but the one that is right. Sometimes standing up for what is yours means fighting battles you did not choose, weathering storms you did not create, and holding firm when everyone is telling you to give in. But in the end, when you are walking through your own forest on your own land, restored to the way it should be, protected by law and respected by the community, all of that struggle feels worth it. The trail winding through the Carolina woods was more than just a path. It was a reminder that property rights matter, that patience and principle can prevail over assumption and entitlement, and that sometimes the best way to protect what is yours is to stand your ground and let the law do what it was designed to do. The HOA had tried to pave over my rights along with my trail. Instead, they paved their way to a very expensive lesson about respecting property, following the law, and understanding that not everything is theirs for the taking just because they want it to be. My grandfather would have been proud. He had always taught me that land was not just an asset, but a responsibility, and that protecting it sometimes meant fighting for it. I had fought, I had won, and now the land was protected for whatever came next. The trail remained, natural and wild and mine, open to those who respected it, protected from those who would destroy it, exactly as it should be.